Hi, everyone. I am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast, where anything can be possible, because when you believe you can, you will. This series is all about getting honest with ourselves and noticing the things that we carry with us. We each have our own life experiences to go from, and sometimes it's hard to truly understand what it's like to be someone else. What we can do to create change is to start with us. If each of us took one action each day in our own lives, we could collectively change the world around us. But what does it take? It takes work, it takes practice, and we have to be honest with ourselves as we get there. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Joey Havens, who is a CPA and currently serving HORNE as Managing Partner of Strategic Growth. Prior to that, he served as Executive Partner from 2012 to 2021, leading more than 1,800 team members. He has also co-authored 4 books during his career at HORNE. He is an active member of CPA Practice Advisor's Top 30 Thought Leaders, and he currently serves on the board of the Mustard Seed, a Christian community for adults with developmental disabilities, and Empower Mississippi. During my interview with Joey, we talk about the importance of the lessons he learned from his parents on work ethic and faith that have been the backbone to his success as a leader. Joey shares key tips in leadership that he has found that helps people to see their full potential and what is possible. You can also get Joey's new book, Leading with Significance, to learn more about his tips after hearing this interview. I hope that you will share this interview with people that it will help that are in leadership, anyone that wants to help people be able to grow and be seen. Joey's got some great tips during this interview. Welcome to Breaking Beliefs. And today I am here with Joey Havens, who really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. I'm very excited for this conversation today. So Joey, you want to give our listeners a little background on yourself?
Excited to be here today. And I'm Joey Havens with HORNE LLP. We're a national accounting firm, top 25, and I'm in my last year with the firm. I'm author of Leading with Significance. I think that'll be the next thing I do in my season of life. But I'm married, I got 8 grandkids, and just loving life every day.
That's awesome. So we're going to start off the beginning of you. And so your childhood and where you grew up and what your parents did. What was your background?
You know, these types of interviews are tough on introverts.
I push introverts to their uncomfortable level.
So we're already at the uncomfortable level.
Yeah.
I grew up in North Mississippi, and fine parents, fine Christian parents, Christian home. Just very, very blessed to be raised in that environment, and had a younger brother and a younger sister. I was the oldest, and we just had a great great home life there in Batesville, Mississippi. And I got out of high school. I knew I wanted to continue my education at Ole Miss. I'm an Ole Miss Rebel, die hard, and I love college sports. So I'm big into following the college sports scene.
Awesome. So what did your father do?
My father did a couple of different things. He didn't attend college, and so when we moved to our hometown, Batesville, he was the produce manager for the Piggly Wiggly store. So he managed all the produce, and he kept going to night school and got an associate's degree and got on with a production company, Venus Industries, that actually made women's undergarments, and
Okay.
he was production manager for that. So I learned more about women's bras at a young age than I probably should know. And then he went to work for a magazine publishing company and finished his career there and retired at the age of 65. And Mom and Daddy are still just very blessed, doing well. They're 85 and 84.
Wow.
And living independently, and go out every Friday night for fish. with friends. So we're just thankful.
And was your mom a stay-at-home mom, or did she work?
She did a little bit of associate teaching. She was a teacher's aide for many, many years. She did a few part-time jobs, and then she was at home mom too.
And how did your parents meet?
They met in high school. They got married early on. I think they were 19 when they got married.
Nice. So having your father, watching him go to night school and so forth, what kind of impact do you think that was, watching him have to work during the day, go to night school, try to take the value of the education that way? Because that's a lot of hard work, having a family and doing all of that.
You definitely you learn that watching him, I learned that the drive to be better. He was always trying to better himself and provide more for his family. We were definitely a middle income family, not the members of the country club or anything. I was out mowing the yard and doing things. He taught us a work ethic that has served me very well.
And then as far as your hobbies, when you were a child, what were your favorite things to do?
Well, I loved all the fishing and hunting kind of things. Even though my dad did not hunt, he did fish some. But playing sports, I mean, we were so competitive, and baseball was the thing that I kind of centered around.
And why was that? Like, what did you love about baseball?
Well, just the competition, and it was something in that small town. Baseball was a big deal, so it gave us a lot of opportunities to compete. And then, I continued to compete in junior high and high school. So it was just something that feel that competitive spirit I had.
Yeah. And then you also said what was important was your Christian background with your parents. So why do you say that, or how did that affect you growing up?
They were just salt of the earth. They are salt of the earth people, very devoted to the Christian faith, and they lived it every day. So it was hard to be raised in that home and not see the importance of that. And it just made a lasting impression on me, although I certainly took many side streets and made many, many mistakes along the way. I always came back to that truth.
Yeah. So when you say they lived it, how do you define living that?
I define it as I saw it every day, and how they loved and cared for us as a family, how they gave to the church, how they gave to their neighbors. We were the family. If somebody was sick, mom was cooking extra and taking it to their house. If the church doors were open, we were there. I mean,
Yeah.
they truly, truly lived it every day.
Well, and I know we're going to get into your story, but it seems like, just knowing you, that generosity is something that's kind of bled through your leadership traits as well.
Oh, and until we started talking about it just then, people have always told me that. I don't know that I'm that generous, but people have always said that. And, I always did see that in my parents and really never connected the dots. But they didn't have much to give, but they gave of their time. And, even now, mom is 84, and I know she has cooked some meals or cakes or a pie for people that had, were in some kind of need or lost a loved one or something.
Yeah, that's such a nice memory to have, and I'm sure makes you so proud.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, then where did accounting fit into all this? Because I'm not seeing it in your background. I'm not seeing it in the hobbies that you talked about that you were interested in. So how did this happen?
I don't know. It's just one of them coincidences in my life. I mean, I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to Ole Miss. I took an accounting course. I took a lot of math. I actually started in engineering school, but I kind of liked the accounting. I was always good with that. The math came easy to me too. So I took some of those, I don't know what they call them, but some of those tests that tell you what you might want to do.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, accounting, actuary, accounting, and a couple others were always real high.
Actuary. Oh no.
I ruled that one out earlier.
My first client at KPMG was interviewing actuaries, and that was hard.
Yeah, I met one and I said, I'm not going to be this.
Yeah. That is definitely for what they go through with schooling, it's amazing as far as their math skills. So, okay, so you took an accounting class and you're like, I like this better than engineering. I mean, what didn't you like about engineering?
I don't, specifically remember what drove me one way or the other. I think a professor, I'll be honest with you, I think there was a professor or two at the accounting school that took a little more interest in me. Dr. Taylor was always taking an interest in me, and I got me more interested. I took the next level, and I really knew nothing about the accounting industry. I didn't know what the big eight was or the big four, or I was just naive about the whole thing.
Well, and I think that's so important because especially, I think we're constantly talking about the pipeline issue and so forth, and the importance of taking interest in young people and trying to guide them, because a lot of, like, your background, you had no background in this, you had no vision of what accounting is. And when we don't spend the time to give people a vision of what this career can be and how many facets there are, sometimes there's an impression of it that's not the case.
That's one of the things I'm really harping on now is we've got to not only tell a better story, got to create a better story.
Mhm.
We've created some of the perception problems ourselves, but we've done a terrible job of really relating how rewarding a career in public accounting is, and how many lives you impact and the kind of significance you can have. So I think it's a matter of us writing a better story, but certainly we need to be telling a better story.
Yeah. So you decided to finish out in accounting, and then what? So how did you know where to go in your career? What was next?
It was funny. I was working part-time for a CPA firm in my hometown. I traveled back and forth about 25 miles to Ole Miss, and I had started out cutting their grass, and then I told them I was taking accounting, and I wanted to work some, so they let me do some bookkeeping. And so I started doing some bookkeeping, W.H. Polk and Company, Mr. Polk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that for 2 or 3 years, and they made an offer to me when I graduated. But I had also talked to some of my friends at school, and they said, well, hey, we're interviewing with these big eight, and we're interviewing with these companies. So I set up some interviews there on campus, and I actually hit it off with Arthur Anderson, and flew out to Houston, Texas. Had to buy a suit, didn't own a suit, so flew out to Houston, Texas, and interviewed out there, and got an offer out there. So I moved to Houston, Texas, and went to work.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. And then what did you start in, tax or audit?
Started in audit.
And so what was your career like there?
Lasted about 3 years. I decided I wanted to move home. I was married, and we wanted to raise a family. We liked Houston. Houston was exciting and fun. It was growing leaps and bounds at the time. I mean, this was before, I think it slowed down in '84, but a friend of mine had decided to move out. He actually left Polk and Company that I had worked for when I was in school, and was starting a CPA firm. And so I moved back home, even though I'd had a really good career with Arthur Anderson. I'd made what they called back then semi-senior in 2 years, and had worked on some really neat accounts, Texas Airlines, and some really, really neat things when Continental was buying them. And decided to move back to Mississippi and went to work with Gary Cornegie to start a firm. So that was really, I went from the largest, biggest, most renowned firm to little rural Mississippi and starting a CPA firm.
And what didn't you know when you started?
I don't know. It was kind of fun.
Mhm.
Now I did miss some of the bigger transactions and that kind of thing. I went back to the small business bookkeeping, but the satisfaction you get from helping people in their lives. So it was very rewarding. I had to buy our first computer and set it up, and I can still remember those floppy drives, sticking them in there and fooling with all of that. But that's bad. You're in trouble if I'm your computer guru.
Yeah, exactly. So how did you grow the firm? Like what was the process of doing that?
Just being out in the community back then, it was all about being in the community and being known. And it's interesting, we got a opportunity with a company in Grenada, Mississippi, which was about 35 miles away. And I served as their CFO for a while. And HORNE, it was HORNE CPA Group at the time, was their main firm.
Mm.
And so that's how I met HORNE, met Jim Martin at the time, was running their Grenada office. And as we come to the conclusion of that, HORNE reached out to me and offered me a job. And it just had so much more upside that I decided, and I had Gary off and running in good shape. So it was a really nice stepping stone. It actually put me in a bigger firm, but not in an Arthur Anderson type environment.
Right. So what did you start out as when you came to HORNE?
I actually started out as a manager.
In audit or in small business?
Well, and at HORNE, I did audit and tax. So
Mhm.
I worked in both areas as I did with Gary's firm. I worked in audit and tax.
Oh, okay.
I just
So
kind of learned tax on the go.
yeah, exactly. People just assume you know tax when you say you're a CPA. So where did the transition happen from subject matter expert, knowing the technical stuff to actually being a manager of people? When do you think you started learning there was a difference?
I think the big change in my career happened at HORNE. Healthcare was the thing that they really was their one niche early on, and
Mhm.
you get a lot of hospital clients. When you do hospitals, you get a lot of doctor clients. And the managing partner at the time, Roy Ward, came to me and said, "Joey, I believe if somebody would specialize or focus on doctor practices, on medical practices, we could grow a really big business." And I had a couple of medical clients already, and I said, "Well, I'll be glad to do that." So I jumped in and just started focusing on medical practices and grew a niche in that. And so that led to me leading that whole area for the firm. That's when I became more and more responsible for more people. And when I really started to understand how deficient I was as a leader.
Well, I would say also, so there were kind of two things in there. Who taught you how to sell? So if he's saying to help you for you to start up a practice, how did you know how to go out and develop business?
It was, honest with you, a little natural for me, even though I'm not an extrovert. I mean, I would not go to a meeting and network with 30 people and follow up with 22 phone calls, but I might have a really good conversation with a couple of people. It was just easy to see how to help people.
Mhm.
Once I learned the medical practices, even how they bill CPT, I studied the CPT codes. I knew what drove revenues. I knew when doctors were not billing properly or missing opportunities, not managing their AR. So it just, that confidence, I went in a matter of 3 years from, hey, we're going to do this, to I was teaching national seminars with Mayor Hoffman McCann out of Kansas City on how to do consulting work with medical practices.
And was there anyone that you modeled after or learned from or watched to know?
Reed Tinsley, who still that is what he does. He lives in Houston, Texas. Reed has his own firm, and he is always just focused on medical practices and healthcare. And we even co-authored a couple of books together. And I met him through the Mayor Hoffman McCann thing, and we started working together a lot. And I learned a lot of really how to promote that through Reed.
Yeah. So as a leader yourself, because this is a place where I think in CPA firms, people are not developed or get surprised that they end up in sales. And sales can have this like really bad connotation, but it's actually like what you said, you're trying to help people. If you feel confident in what you're trying to go out there with, that you're actually helping people. It's not like a car sale. And so forth. So where did you see that you started grooming people to learn to sell?
I started teaching a lot of leadership classes in HORNE. I just developed them. And the one that stuck a lot that I continue to teach from time to time, and I turned it into an ebook recently, is the ABCs to Outstanding. And it's just helping young people get off to a faster start and understand the power of that A, B, and C.
So you wanted to find that for people listening?
Yeah, sure. A is attitude. Attitude determines your success even more than your IQ, and that's scientific. Martin Seligman is a noted psychologist, has done a lot of study in that. And so stop giving up control of your attitude, and how important attitude is. B is for better focus. It's just amazing how much you can get done if you'll just create some focus time. Understand when your high energy is and put your most important things during your high energy times. And the C is for constant learning. 30 years ago when I put this together, I had no idea how big the C would be today. But constant learning and being a lifelong learner, I think every leader, if you're truly a leader, you're always growing and learning. And constant learning is something that separates you from being average.
Yeah. So how did you start seeing like this was a skill of yours in leadership? So you knew you were a good accountant, you were able to develop this business, but you started putting these training materials together very early. Why did you see that need, and where did you see that you were excelling in this versus others?
Maybe excelling some and failing more. I was so competitive, so driven for success that I made a lot of mistakes, and eventually realized I needed a coach. And so I hired my first external coach, and Dr. Joe Paul, and he helped me understand everything from fuzzy agreements to how I could be more influential. And I matured more in my Christian faith. I began to realize why God put me on earth was to help people see and realize their full potential. And that's the thing that gives me joy, is helping other people really understand what's possible. We don't have enough confidence in ourselves.
Right.
And for some people, it's hard for them to see what's possible. And so I have an innate gift or talent to be able to talk about what's possible and then help people see how to take the steps to do that. And so I started realizing that, and once I got focused on that, it made it easy to grow tremendous teams, and led to a lot of what I did in my leadership at HORNE.
Yeah. And so I think first thing that's comes from your background, when you talked about earlier, was being in baseball and how competitive you were. And one of the things about, that it was kind of an interesting observation. I was at a speaker training, and at that training, there were like Olympic athletes that speak, right? And there would be master classes where they were getting feedback. And there was one Olympian that was doing her thing and she was getting critiqued. And the coach, the facilitator, stopped everything to turn to the audience and said how good she is at taking coaching because she's an athlete. That a lot of professionals are not as good at taking coaching because of that competitiveness of like feeling like, oh, well, that's going to take me down if I'm going to get that feedback, or someone's going to brand me badly. But athletes look at coaching completely different, where it's like, oh, if I do that one thing, that might save me a half a second, or it will get me a half a second faster, where they have a completely different perspective. So do you think that helped you being in sports to be able to take that feedback?
I do see that connection, and I do think elite athletes, like what you're talking about, understand the power of coaching because they've applied it. I didn't really relate it. I mean, I saw it later on. I mean, I've seen it even before you mentioned it, hey, in sports, when the coach told me to try this, put my left foot forward first,
Right.
I was able to hit the ball further. So I understood that. But when you grow up in business, you kind of comes a disconnect, at least it did for me. I thought it was about how do I get the next star and, how do I climb the ladder? And I really wasn't thinking about the waves that I was causing around me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like what you talk about a lot, Amy, until you know yourself better, know why you're here and what your backstory is and how it affects you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you stop to realize that. But now organizations have a big opportunity to teach that, or that's why I started doing the ABCs to Outstanding, because that's exactly what it teaches you, is that with some coaching, you can excel in a lot of different areas. And when you elevate those around you, it always pays off over and over and over again.
Yeah. So how would, because I think this is when I go into CPA firms, this is definitely a pet peeve of mine, is review notes. Because people are not even trained on that kind of feedback, or in how you word things to be encouraging rather than like, I don't have time for this, exclamation point. Or I'm just going to do it myself because I don't have time to coach you. So what kind of suggestions or help do you give to people in firms that are trying to lead on feedback? Like, how do you give feedback in a way that's encouraging and helpful, and give of your time, which is such a big thing that you talk about?
Yeah, I think the real hard part is for leaders to be vulnerable enough to trust in people.
Mm-hmm.
And when you trust in people and then you demonstrate that you really care about them, in other words, I understand who Amy is and what Amy's backstory is. What are your aspirations? What are you trying to achieve? When I understand that, and that I've spent the time to understand that, and I care about your career and you succeeding and you hitting your goals, you're going to allow me to coach you. Then you're going to listen to even if I'm not great at giving feedback, you're going to listen to that voice, because it's coming from somebody that truly cares about you succeeding and wanting you to grow in leadership. So I think that's our real disconnect, is that we are busy and we're not as leaders, making the real, I write in everybody's book, be intentional,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it's about, being intentional to connect so that you can coach people. that when they have that strong sense of belonging, they want to achieve great things. They want the organization. They want to understand how they're building something bigger than themselves. So that starts with that leader, that direct leader relationship.
So as you moved through Horn in this organization, how did you multiply this beyond yourself to make this more of a culture?
Well, I think I started having success in healthcare where I was, and then they asked me to run our government services area and started running that and grew it into a big team. And then I had the opportunity to be elected as the managing partner of the firm in 2011. And as part of that process, I was asked to give a vision for why should you be the managing partner, and what's your vision for the firm? And that's where I shared the vision of the wise firm, which is based on the biblical parable of the wise man and the foolish man. Wise man built his house on the rock, and the foolish man built his house on the sand. The storms came, the wind blew, the rain pelted down, the water flowed, and it washed the foolish man's house away. And we wanted to build a firm based on the solid rock of we and service. And I compared that to the foolish firm, where it was me and self-interest, and where it was about politics and not empowering people, and negative energy versus positive energy. I actually built several building blocks to show the difference. And when the partner group saw that, they really embraced that vision and said, that's who we want to be.
And how did you make sure the partner group was demonstrating that as managing partner?
That is a long journey. That is a long journey. I wrote a book about that.
Yeah.
So it's a long journey. And the thing that I tell everybody when it comes to culture or your partner group, it is a conversation at a time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you'll overestimate what you can do in the short term, but you'll underestimate what you do in the long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have to take that slow process to get there. Yeah.
Yes.
Like one person at a time. And it goes back to just even the staff people of showing you care and learning about them. Yeah.
They have to have that strong sense of belonging. And once they have that, they're going to help others. It grows. That's where the magnetic energy comes from. You help 2 or 3 people have a strong sense of belonging, they're going to do the very same thing for 2 or 3 more. And all of a sudden you got 10, and then you got 20, and then you got 30. And all of a sudden people realize, hey, we're doing something special here. That's where discretionary effort comes from. That's where people begin to see it as a career and a calling and not a job.
Mm-hmm. So where did you see, because from an ROI perspective, from a business perspective, people are going to want to know. So where did you see the benefits of doing this in your firm?
That's always a hard case too, because you have to move on faith, because there's not a direct line. Mm-hmm. But there are plenty of lines. And one of the things I like to do is help people do a reflection opportunity where you really study where you're at. Like, what is your turnover, and what is it costing you, and what is your client churn? And do you really have client cheerleaders? We all say, yeah, our clients are cheerleaders. Well, I'll tell you, if 50% of your clients are cheerleaders, you will do double-digit organic growth every year. Mm-hmm. So if you're not doing double-digit organic growth every year, you don't have 50% cheerleaders. So you're not delivering the kind of client service that you really say you're doing and you intend to do. It's the same thing in culture. We have great intentions. The partners, the CEO especially, usually has great intentions, but what happens on a day-to-day basis is another story, because people are not intentional. Right.
So what drove you to write your book and kind of go on to this next phase of your journey?
Well, first and foremost, I thought maybe after I had put all of that together and we had had so much success, continuing to have incredible success. But it starts with the people, the magic's in the people. I thought I might do something after I retired, but I've got a little bit, January of 24, I'll retire from HORNE. And God wouldn't let me sleep. He kept saying, you need to get started. And that's your next mission. And I kept putting it off. And a friend sent me a handcrafted pen, a wooden handcrafted pen, and with a note in there. And it said, I don't know why I'm sending you this, but in my prayer life, God told me to send you this to you.
Aw.
So I knew, so I got to writing. So it took me about a year to write it, about a year to get it through all the edits and get it published. And 1 week from today, it comes out.
That's awesome. Perfect. And that's amazing that you got it done in a year too. So books
About
are
2 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Year putting it together and a year getting it through everything.
Yeah, it is a challenge. So what have you learned from the process?
So many things. Oh my gosh. I learned that first and foremost, I call it coincidences throughout the book. And in the final thoughts, I share a little more around that. But I realized how much God had his hand on me and the firm, that all these coincidences kept happening. And so when I stopped and reflected and put the story together, I realized how much more there was to share, especially from mistakes, and that there's, everybody's journey will be unique, but you have to get started and you have to be intentional, and you never win, but you get the opportunity to get up the next day ahead. And you have to be intentional with culture every day.
So why is this so important to you to get this message out?
I think it's part of my helping people see and realize their full potential. I think it is inspiring leaders to be vulnerable enough to trust in people and to intentionally care and serve in ways that leads to high performance. I mean, high performance and winning is fun. The level of success that we've had as a firm is it's incredible. I mean, we were basically a $50 million firm and maybe 60th in the country, and we're a top 25 firm today, and 8 times that, so we're nearly 400 million.
Wow, that's amazing.
Organically.
Yes. Yeah.
That's not buying practices.
Right.
Not that there's anything wrong with buying practices.
Right. Well, and I do think it's an important, this is a discussion I have with firms, is that, if you want to stay independent, if you want to grow, if you don't want to have no choice in merging or getting acquired, there's still an investment, like you're talking about, that you have to make in the organization. So it's one choice or the other. But if you decide to stay as you are, there is an investment in money, time, resources, people that have to change to make that kind of growth in your own firm and sustainability. So
well stated. I mean, the business model has to change, and you can change it with outside money. You can change it by moving up into another organization, or you can do it yourself. But you're not going to be successful running a firm the way we've ran it the last 100 years.
No, even if you want to.
I mean, you can want to, and it's just like this. You can be running down the interstate 70 miles an hour, and when you run out of gas, it is not any fun when you're on the side of the road.
Exactly.
And that's where you're going to end up. And there's not going to be as many people in the car with you either.
Right. Exactly. No one wants to be on the side of the road. Exactly. So I like to end these interviews with just some rapid fire questions. So pick
Well,
a
that seems like
category.
what we've been doing so far, isn't
I
it?
know. Well, there's more. So either family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
I'll take spiritual.
Okay. All right. Things or actions that I don't have that I do want.
I want a closer walk with my Savior, Jesus Christ.
Things or actions I do have that I want to keep.
The peace and joy that comes from knowing my purpose in life.
I love that. Things or actions I don't have that I don't want.
Doubt in God's control.
Things or actions that I do have that I don't want as far as my spirituality.
The habit of getting too busy.
and and you even have to think of that in retirement. So
Yes.
because it can be just as busy, right?
I think it's more busy so far. It's kind of crazy, but we'll
Exactly.
see. But I want it to be. I mean, I want to, I want to see the ability to elevate and help other people do great things.
Yeah. And you can see that purpose and all of that driven through you from your family all the way through now. So that's awesome. So anything that we haven't talked about or you want to make sure we close out with before we end today's interview?
I think we have two choices in life. We can chase success, which is more power, more money, more whatever, titles. Or we can choose to lead with significance, which is all about having an impact on other people's lives. And in my opinion, that's how we honor God, by caring and serving for others. And success will always follow us if we start with significance, but significance does not follow success.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. There's so many great nuggets for people, and definitely watch for Joey's book, Leading with Significance. Lots of people have posted their testimonials already. I've loved the book. I got an early copy of it. So I appreciate you sharing that with me, Joey, and being on today and sharing your story.
Well, thank you so much, Amy. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate what you do for our profession.
Well, thank you.
Welcome to our Mindful Moments segment, where I'm going to talk about some highlights, I think, from the Joey Havens interview. And the first one is really his background and all about his parents, which you can tell how much he loved his parents and cared for his parents and also looked up to them, where his parents didn't have much, but their hard work and their faith were something that Joey has really drawn upon during his career in order to bring that into other skills, his human skills of leadership that he was taught long ago with his parents. He watched his dad really with his work ethic of trying to go to night school in order to better himself, and having parents that really loved being in the community, and they didn't have much, but what they did do and give was their time. And I think that is underestimated a lot of times in our organizations and our culture, that we think that the way to give is money, and that can be a great way to give. But what comes at an even higher cost a lot of times is giving of our time, especially in our busy lives. And that skill as a leader is such an important skill that even as you're getting busy, spending time with people, giving of your time, is what helps people feel seen, and you can identify things that are going to help them in their career so that they can grow and be able to achieve their desires by giving them their time. And this is a really important piece because it actually worked into Joey's story that, number one, Joey didn't know that he was going to be an accountant one day. He didn't have that example in his life. I once heard a podcast with Brene Brown where she talked about her daughter going to college, and she was very against her daughter finding a degree right away because we put all this pressure on young adults to have their degree right away. And really, this time of exploration and finding what our passions are, where work won't feel like work, is so important. And she had told her daughter that her first year of college, she wasn't allowed to pick a degree, that her job was to pick any class that was of interest to her so that she could explore all the education that was available and see what she was attracted to and what path that she wanted to go down when it was time. So those things are so important. And in Joey's case, he really had no example of accountants in his life. And when he went to school, he started out in engineering because he was good at math. But it was a professor, again, that gave their time to really take notice of Joey and give him some guidance on being an accountant, taking a career as a CPA, what that would look like. And those things are so important, and especially when we're talking about pipeline issues in the profession and so forth, that giving of your time to people that don't have the example of this profession is so, so important, and not realizing what a lucrative career it can be. And so we talked about his career and how he started out in the Big Eight, which was with Arthur Andersen, which for those of you that are younger, no longer exists, but it was the top firm to work for at the time. And he went from working at a really big firm to then going with his friend and starting up a practice with his friend. And I think this was a great discussion because when he moved into his career at Horn, he was immediately, identified by the partner to start up their healthcare practice and to grow it. And so when you get that experience in a small practice and starting up a practice, you really learn what it takes to develop business and to develop relationships and to bootstrap things. And so when you're given these opportunities to start something up in an organization, to be able to fall back on that entrepreneur experience in our background is so important. So, even if we're starting up a new practice within a business or a firm, that's still entrepreneurial, and we have to have that entrepreneurial mindset to be able to do that, to have the confidence to go out there. And so he really found that selling was a natural thing for him because of the relationships. He was able to make conversation easily. And I think this is a really important thing that many people don't realize in the careers that they choose, that they're going to be called on to sell, whether that's upselling, whether that's business development, whether that's starting something up brand new. But it's important that we give younger professionals the opportunity to see what a sales conversation looks like, to not think of it like car sales, that you're actually solving for a need is so important. And so he talked about, as he grew into a leader, how important coaching was, and to help him see what his full potential was. And he really saw that he had this unique skill to help others and to really help, staff and the teams be able to see what's possible and what steps that they need to take to do that. And he talked about how important it is for leaders to be vulnerable enough so that staff will trust them. And I think that's really important, that when we try to portray this vision of something that maybe we aren't, people know. People can see that it doesn't align, and they feel closer to you and that you care when you actually are being open about, the trials and tribulations you've gone through and giving them information on that. And so when he grew into a managing partner, one of the key things that was so important of building a foundation to really grow this firm was empowering the people, of changing the way that they did their culture And he talked about making it one conversation at a time, that in order to help other leaders be able to shift the culture, it takes time. It's not something that's going to be done overnight. But he calls this magnetic energy, that once you get 2 to 3 people going, then those people get 2 to 3 people going, and so forth, and it starts growing. And that is a really important thing that we need to understand, that it's not, I talk about this in my book as well. We talked about Joey's book, Leading with Significance. But in my book, it has a very similar thing about that in order to truly connect with people, we need to be more open and not feel like there is this layer between leadership and staff. And so he really talked about that this book, this Leading with Significance, his new book, was something that he felt was his next mission, that he felt called upon, and that his faith has really driven him to feel the need to help more and more people, and that there was so much more that he wanted to share. And so as he moves into his next journey, when he eventually retires from Horn, this is something that he wants to be doing every day, to help people to see their full potential and care and serve in ways for them to succeed. So he's really proven his success over time. And we really ended with him talking about that, there's really 2 choices with success. You can chase it and just want more and more and more, or you can choose to lead with significance, which means impacting other people's life in small ways that really draw into big ways as well. So I hope you enjoyed this interview with Joey. I know I did. He always has so many great tidbits around leadership that are so helpful for all of us. So definitely go out, get his book, Leading with Significance. And for those of you that are reading my book, Disconnect to Connect, Tap into the Power Within You to Create the Life You Desire, we will be soon recording new podcasts. There will be a book club series where we will talk about different chapters of the book each episode with guests from the book. So stay tuned for that. Definitely get your copy so that you can be able to follow along with us as we go through this book club. So I want to thank you for listening. Definitely share this with your friends or family or colleagues that you think that this episode will be helpful.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.